Unfortunately, the Edmonton Oilers did in fact lose the Stanley Cup Monday night. We're 2 days on. There's still a whole lot to talk about. Let's get to work, Oilers fans.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Locked On Oilers. I want to thank everybody who makes Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, your team every day. I'm your host, Nick Zararis. Whole lot to get to, but before we get to today's episode, gotta let you all know today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So, we're still in the processing of grief segment of the 12 stages of grief. We are not healed. We are not ready to make peace yet. I don't think I'm going to be able to sit right on this for a while, frankly. I think when you lose a game that close and you didn't get screwed, you didn't get blown out, nothing unfair happened. You just didn't win the game. I think that's the most agonizing in particular because you did everything you could, and it just wasn't enough. So we're going to start there. We're going to start with the processing of feelings surrounding the Oilers' loss. Then I'm going to pull up the shot maps. We're going to talk a little bit what we talked about in relation to the end of the game on Monday night, on Tuesday's episode. We're going to talk in relation to what we talked about, where the shots on goal were coming from, why the Oilers had such a hard time generating offense consistently, why defensemen taking more shots isn't necessarily a good thing, even though they were open to take those shots. And then the last segment, we'll kind of tie a bow on the season. We will have don't let the way the story ended sour how the process to get to the ending came. So we'll get there. But first, I spent a lot of time last night in bed reading. I was on Twitter. I was reading different columns. I read a few different ones in The Athletic. I read a few on the various Canadian websites, Sportsnet, TSN, etc. Just trying to contextualize how this story is going to be told. Because that's always something I enjoy about the end of a season in a sport. I love reading how the team came together, or the profile about the coach, or the key player that came from a different organization in the offseason. I love reading that type of stuff because it gives me insight into the people. It unlocks a deeper understanding. And that's all I'm ever looking for from anything I'm consuming when it comes to sports media. I want you to enhance my understanding of what's going on. I watched the game already. I put the work into the data analysis, the statistical analysis. I'll watch the game back if there's something I want to understand. The mechanics of the game, I got. But the human element, that's the value of legacy sports media, is humanizing these figures, putting some background, giving them some depth, that they're not just players wearing jerseys on the ice, that these are real people who live rich lives with a lot of different components that go into making them who they are. And I spent a lot of time on yesterday's episode talking about what this loss means for Connor McDavid, what the type of player Connor McDavid means to the Oilers, to the Canadian identity in terms of Olympic representation, and trying to get to that pantheon. And I think he's there. I am very confident that when all is said and done, whenever Connor McDavid decides to hang up his skates, Stanley Cup or not, Olympic gold medals or not, I think Connor McDavid is very much going to be in that upper echelon. He is going to be right there with Sidney Crosby, with Mario Lemieux, with Wayne Gretzky. He will finish in that category of player, the inner ring of the Hall of Fame, if you will. I am not ready to lampoon, skewer, whatever verb you want to use to describe how you want to take out your emotions on him, on Draisaitl, on Hyman, on Skinner, whoever you feel in particular deserves ire. It is one thing to feel like, man, if this guy just made this play, I think that's fair. I think if you want to say if Brett Kulak doesn't give Reinhart so much room, Skinner either is more on his post and he makes that save, or Reinhart doesn't have a lane to shoot at all and takes that puck into the corner or cycles it. That is a fair critique. Saying, Leon and Connor, you're supposed to be the best players in the world. I needed you to take the game over. I think that's not constructive. I think the way you would want to say that properly and not kind of in a non-malicious way is the Oilers' recipe for success in these playoffs has been Connor and Leon making some special stuff happen when the game has been hanging in the balance. You know, Leon's assist to set up the Fogle goal in Game 6 is one of the best passes. One of the best passes I saw all season, regular season and playoffs. It was really, really key at the time it happened in the game. And it was just, there's not a lot of guys in the league who can make that type of saucer pass to get it over the sticks on the way to get it over there. I understand you're disappointed Draisaitl only had 4 points the entire series. I understand you're probably disappointed McDavid didn't have any shots in goal in Game 6, and he didn't have any points in Game 7. I understand the frustration. We have to contextualize these things. It's not just Connor McDavid and Draisaitl didn't score. Well, did they still get their scoring chances? In McDavid's case, yes. We're going to look at the shot maps from Game 7 and kind of illustrate for you. The Oilers didn't play poorly. The Oilers had their chances. They just weren't able to convert them. You think about the goals in this game. The first Florida goal, the Verhaeghe deflection, it's a failed zone exit. Edmonton tries to go up the wall at the end of a power play, at the end of a penalty kill, The penalty kill had expired. It was 5-on-5. But because the puck dies at the half wall, Florida's able to regroup. They get the puck on net, and Verhaeghe makes a crazy deflection. You're not mad at Skinner. Should Bouchard have probably stayed at the net front as opposed to trying to pressure the puck carrier? Yeah. But that's a split-second decision, and I understand what he was trying to do. That was not a fundamental defensive breakdown. He was trying to pressure the puck carrier. He made a choice. Didn't work out. The Oilers got a mulligan, though. Janmark comes down, scores on the breakaway. You'll notice that's part of why it was so hard for the Oilers to find ways to score in this game. There weren't a lot of those rush opportunities that there were in Games 5, 6, and 7. Janmark's breakaway, that's really the only one that sticks in my mind as far as getting a clean zone entry with speed, putting pressure on the defense, and then putting pressure on Bobrovsky. This was a really difficult Game 7. There was not a lot of room, and frankly, you got to give Florida credit. This is not a individual thing. These are two teams in direct conflict with each other, trying to play the game a certain way. And because of that, you can't just blame Edmonton. Sure, you can say they had a lot of chances and they didn't convert them. That's fair. You can't say, oh, they choked, oh, they didn't live up to the moment, because that's ignorant of the fact that Florida is also actively trying to win the game as well. And Florida played a perfect Game 7. They took the air out of Edmonton. They made Edmonton start riding the star players. You know, Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman were out there a ton in that third period trying to chase that goal. And because of that, by the time we got to the last shift of the game, they were gassed. They couldn't string together 3 straight passes when they were trying to chase that goal with the net empty. And it took them forever to get the net empty because those guys were so gassed. They had to spell them. They had to send the Henrique line out there for a shift just to give McDavid and Draisaitl a breather. But I was not a fan of the way the Oilers managed their bench down the last 5 to 10 minutes of the game. They put way too much on their plate, and I get it. You want your best players out there as much as you possibly can when you need a goal in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. That's kind of the point of having the best players in the world. But you got to give them enough time that they are going to give you regular shifts at a consistent level. By the time we got to 4 minutes to go, they go off. There's a TV timeout. They come back from commercial. They're climbing back over the boards. McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Ekholm, Bouchard. Those guys are spent. They get one shift of Henrique's line, and then that's it. They come back out, McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Bouchard, Ekholm. I would have liked to have seen Nugent-Hopkins out there as the sixth guy he was eventually. I would have liked to have seen him out there as opposed to Ekholm, and I know it's risky at that point to be running 4 forwards, I really would have preferred that. I think if you're trying to manufacture that offense, you need to do everything you can, and that means getting an extra forward out there before you pull the goalie. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the shots, where they came from, where they didn't come from, who took them. in a minute. So stick around to Locked On Oilers, where we've got your team covered every day. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available for U.S. customers. I want to thank everybody listening to this Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. I know when I am in the stages of grief process of mourning the end of a season, I try to focus on the positive side of things, because if you dwell on the what could have been, you wake up 5 years later having a nightmare about a missed opportunity. I very much so wake up in the middle of the night still dreaming about losses my teams have endured. I think about all the drops Odell Beckham had in the divisional round against the Packers back in, I think it was 2016, as a Giant fan. I think about the missed baskets the Knicks had in games 6 and 7 against the Pacers this year in the second round of the playoffs. I think about Connor Gillespie hitting that home run in the 2016 wildcard game against the Mets a lot. These things stick with you. These are scar-forming experiences. These are not easy emotions to process or handle. You just spent the previous 10 months of your life on one of the craziest roller coasters ever. The Oilers were in dead last in the middle of November, and they made a coaching change, and they rattled off a 670-something win percentage for the rest of the season. They made the Stanley Cup final for the first time in 18 years. And they came up that short. Bob was out of the net. The puck was there. McDavid had a chance. Hyman had a chance. There was an opportunity. It wasn't to be. To quote Bob Cole, R.I.P. Bob Cole, it wasn't to be. They did everything they could, and they couldn't make it happen. Whether you want to believe in the curse of Corey Perry, if you want to just say Florida outplayed them, whatever. It didn't happen for them. So we're going to continue this unpacking, this grieving process. I'm going to pull up the shot map from Evolving Wild, because I do want to illustrate the point I've been making about the way Game 7 unfolded and why Edmonton had such a hard time creating offense. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to click over here to Evolving Wild. I want to see how it's sized. Okay. So on this left side, this is even strength the entire game. The Panthers are on this right-hand side. We're not really going to focus on them because we're talking about the Oilers. We'll talk about the Reinhart shot and the Verhaeghe shot, but you look at this Oilers shot map on this left-hand side. This is only 5-on-5. This does not include their one power play opportunity. You will notice a heavy concentration of scoring chances here. This McDavid shot is the one I was talking about. It's the one that was the featured image on the thumbnail for yesterday's episode, where they got the puck to him in alone, where it was just him and Bobrovsky. And then Montour got a stick in the way and McDavid couldn't make a play on it. That was probably their best chance of the entire game. An expected goals value of 15.8 is crazy. That means 15.8% of the time shots from that location go in. You got to remember, the average NHL player shoots about 9%. So a shot being 16% of the time resulting in a goal, that is a really dangerous scoring chance. But that's not the main point. The main point about this game, you'll notice, and the cursor is here, so you'll notice if you go top half of the circles to the blue line, that is the significant portion. We're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. More than half of the Oilers scoring chances come from the top of those circles. And I understand that's what the game was giving them. And that's why you can't rag on Ekholm or Bouchard for taking all the shots they did. But in an ideal world, you don't want your defensemen shooting that much. You want your shots to be coming from dangerous areas. And the Oilers had their chances. I want to reiterate that the Oilers had, and they did generate some quality scoring chances. They just weren't able to go in. You'll see up here at the top, 2.62 expected goals. So if you add up the value of each of those individual dots that are on your screen right now, that would add up to 2.62. And I'm going to scroll over to the Florida side here for a second. You'll notice it says Florida shots for 1.17 expected goals. Florida's 2 goals. The Verhaeghe shot is here. This is the tip in. There's basically nothing Skinner could do. Bouchard is in between. That shot comes from here or here. I forget which one of these the shot is, but it comes from over here, and it's on net, and Verhaeghe deflects it. There's not really anything you could do. You would say maybe Bouchard, being in the shooting lane, has to disrupt the pass and not let it through. I'm inclined to give this one okay, especially because Mark scored less than 2 minutes later to even it out. This goal here is extremely low quality, and it's a testament to how good of a player Sam Reinhart. It'd be one thing if this is a defenseman who beats Skinner high on a squeaker. Sam Reinhart scored 57 goals in the regular season. Brett Kulak needs to make an executive decision, and he needs to put pressure on the shooter, Reinhart, or he needs to throw his body in front of the shot. Those are his 2 options. He played the shot too conservatively. Skinner was trying to play both the shot and the pass because Kulak and Ceci were so condensed. They were very close to each other on the ice. I'm going to close that. But Kulak and Ceci were very compressed. They were very close together, maybe less than 5 feet apart from each other, shading Reinhardt's side. So Skinner can't hug the post as much as he wants to because his defensemen are conjoined, basically. They're occupying the same area of the ice. Because of that, Skinner still has to respect the possibility Reinhardt could pass. Obviously, Reinhardt's a great shooter. You would want your goalie playing shot there. But he can't only play shot because the defensemen are so close to each other that if the pass gets to the middle, Skinner's got to give himself a chance to get over. And because of the way the game goes, it'll get pointed at Kulak. It'll get pointed at Ceci. It will get pointed at McDavid not being able to convert the best scoring chance the Oilers had all night because you've seen him make that play where he's handcuffed, he's in the phone booth, he's got less than 2 feet to the goalie, but he's able to get the puck around them because he's the best player in the world. It is okay to be mad. It is okay to be frustrated. The Oilers played a good Game 7. Florida played a great Game 7. The way Florida wants to play is conducive to these types of games. You've heard me talk about this all series long. Low scoring, low event makes each individual scoring chance more valuable. And when Edmonton got going up and down, that's when they were able to open things up. Breakaways, rush opportunities, 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s. That's where Edmonton's at their most dangerous. When Edmonton has to get the puck in deep, win a puck battle, get the puck out to the point, 1 pass, 2 pass, 3 pass, 4 pass, 5 pass, that's 45 seconds to just get 1 shot on goal. It is really difficult to generate offense when you are only getting 1 shot, and it's a defenseman taking it. You don't want Bouchard being your leading shot total taker in an elimination Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. Bouchard has an above-average shot for a defenseman. That's not the problem. The problem is that he is taking shots from too far away, and the Oilers weren't able to tip any of them. It's a different conversation if they're a little bit better in front of the net front, but they don't really have the personnel to win those net front battles. With Evander Kane injured, Corey Perry being older, he's not the Corey Perry of old. Corey Perry of 10 years ago, net front menace, but that's not really his game. The Oilers' best net front player is Zach Hyman. He's going to do what he can to get to that space, but if he can't get there, he can't get there. And the Oilers weren't able to find a way to kind of manufacture offense in the way you need in these tight games. And that's a question mark for the other 31 teams in the league. Florida is going to have to address roster decisions. They've got a lot of unrestricted free agents from the team that just won the Stanley Cup, and I'm sure they're going to lose at least 1 or 2 of those guys just because the entire point of the salary cap is to penalize successful teams. But this isn't a Florida Panthers podcast. This is Locked On Oilers, where we got your team covered every day. So we're going to take one more quick break. We'll circle back around, and we'll wrap up talking about the feelings and then how we can start to look ahead to the offseason. So be sure to stick around. One of my favorite parts of summer, going to a Major League Baseball game. Unfortunately, I'm a Met fan. The Mets are playing the Yankees tonight. Not going to be in the building, but I am going to a Yankee game next week. And I did get my tickets over at Gametime. Nothing says summer like going to a baseball game. My personal favorite thing, Gametime's app has some of the best features in the business. Things like zone deals, where you save more if you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats. All-in pricing, where they show you the price up front with no surprise fees at checkout. My personal favorite, the seat view, where you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. And for you, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying baseball tickets, concert tickets, comedy show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I want to thank everybody making Locked On Oilers part of their Wednesday. I know this is going to be a long offseason. I know the season has dragged on and on. The draft is later this week. The buyout window is open in the present. Free agency is a week from yesterday. So we're really about to get a lot of business really rapidly. I assume we're all in the loop. We saw Linus Ullmark get traded from Boston to Ottawa. I assume you saw the news that the Morello family has walked away from the Arizona Coyotes, and the Coyotes will not be returning under the Morello ownership group. Another ownership group may come together, may be pieced together at some point to bring another NHL franchise to Arizona. But for right now, all we can do is wait. The Oilers have decisions. They have a lot of important things to figure out about where they're going and how they're going to try and address their perceived shortcomings. They have quite a few free agents. They have a major decision to make in regards to Leon Draisaitl, what type of contract and how much term, how much money he's looking for. But I don't want to get into the minutia of the offseason yet, because one of the important parts of this process, of this grieving process, is acknowledging those feelings, because you have these feelings because of how much you care. I know the average person does not understand why sports fans are the way they are. They are entirely befuddled why we are rendered speechless, rendered speechless, rendered so upset. You know, I had a handful of people text me a condolences about the Oilers losing last night, as if I had lost a family member. That's how serious sports are for some people. For people like me who live and die by this stuff, it is as grueling and as difficult and emotional maelstrom. That's a good word, maelstrom. That's an SAT word for you guys in high school listening to the show. It is about as difficult an emotional whirlwind, especially because the Oilers did everything they could. They played really well. They were undoubtedly the second best team in the league this year. I don't think that's much of a consolation, because the Florida Panthers currently have the Stanley Cup on a beach somewhere in Fort Lauderdale. But 30 other teams are in the exact same boat as the Oilers. The Oilers did not embarrass themselves. They did not get jobbed. They didn't get screwed over by a bad call like the Lightning did or the Sabres did back in the day. They lost to a team that played a little bit better. The Oilers are going to grapple with this as individuals probably for the rest of their lives, especially if this opportunity doesn't present itself again. I imagine the Oilers probably take a step back as far as playoff performance next year, not because they won't be a good team, but because the playoffs are so random. You don't need to be the better team to win a playoff series. Vancouver was not better than the Oilers, and they almost beat the Oilers. It is not the NHL playoffs reward teams that can get to the highest peak, not necessarily sustain the highest baseline. That's the conundrum of these 7-game series. Regular season consistency is great, but there are a lot of duds in that regular season calendar. You look at all those games in December, January, February, where it feels like a slog. It feels like you're never going to get to the trade deadline. It feels like you're never going to get to the playoffs. You're in Columbus on a Tuesday. You're in Ottawa on a Thursday. You're in Arizona in front of 5,000 people on a Saturday in February. I understand. Then the trade deadline happens. You start to believe the additions the Oilers made were going to be the difference. And Adam Henrique had a very good playoff. I have no qualms about giving up the first-round pick for Adam Henrique because he was very good. He was very good in these playoffs. It's a shame he was hurt. He missed so many games early on. He was one of their most effective players. That third line did a really nice job in Game 6 and 7 of this series, especially in Game 7, where they were holding the puck in the offensive zone, cycling, forcing Florida to play defense. And even though they didn't end up putting anything in the back of the net, they were able to put some pressure on Florida, make them play defense. And it's a real frustrating situation because the Oilers were right there. And that's what I'm going to keep coming back to and why I keep repeating it on this episode. They were right there. We're not talking about miles to go to the finish line. We are not talking about a huge gap between the Oilers and the Panthers. This is not like the Rangers, who won 2 games in overtime with goals from Barclay Goodrow and Alex Wenberg. The Oilers were right there. Their stars matched Florida's stars for several games. The Oilers' depth shone through. Dylan Holloway, I walk away very encouraged from these playoffs on how Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway played, how Evan Bouchard played. Young guys who still have some room to mature, to improve their ceiling and overall improve the Oilers. I walk away entirely convinced that Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, Nugent-Hopkins is as good a 1, 2, 3, 4 as you're going to have. For the Oilers, it's really simple. Can you find ways to improve on the margins? Can you improve one of your defenseman spots? Can you maybe get one more forward in here who's a little bit more consistent that can chip in some offense? I liked what I saw from Connor Brown. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep him money-wise. The Oilers, they're going to have some difficult decisions to make. They do not have a lot of players under contract for next season, and they don't have a lot of cap space to replace guys who leave. So they are going to need guys who want to do what Corey Perry did and take less money to go to a contender. But we've got an entire offseason for that. So that will just about do it for this edition of Locked On Oilers. I hope everybody can allow themselves to enjoy this season for what it was, to go into the summer not entirely sour, but it's okay to be upset. If you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please take the 1 second, leave the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, this is not my normal backdrop. I'm usually littered with jerseys and memorabilia behind me, but at my girlfriend's house, a lot less to work with as far as Oilers stuff. So if you were watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell to get a notification whenever new content goes live. Leave me a comment. What is going to be your lasting memory of this playoff run? I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.